Dr. Kathy McFarland.
And I'm Mark Bobo, and welcome to the OSBA Forum. Kathy, Happy New Year.
2024, big year.
You know, we're already to January 30th. The month has gone so quickly.
It has gone quickly.
And a lot of good things have happened. We have to celebrate. Someone went off and got married.
I did.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much. And here's an interesting factoid for you. He is actually the CEO in Oklahoma.
You don't say.
Of their school board association. So he lives in Oklahoma and I live here in Ohio, and we make it work. And some people say that's probably why it works.
So shout out to Dr. Sean Heim.
Yes.
And the Oklahoma State School Board Association.
Correct.
Did I get it right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, as always, we're excited to be here with you today to bring you the OSBA Forum. Your association is committed to keeping you up to date with in regards to the issues in public education. As you know, the Department of Education in Ohio experienced a transition in 2023 and reestablished as the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. With this transition, we as educational leaders are eager to learn how best we can partner with the department to ensure that students have every opportunity to be successful in the classroom and prepared for the workforce in the 21st century. And Kathy, I know that our guest today is going to help us understand that better.
He certainly is.
Yeah.
And we are very, very pleased and happy to welcome the Director of the Department of Education and Workforce, Stephen Dackin. And Mr. Dackin and I have taken some classes together, so we have enjoyed a few classes on our journey in our educational leadership. So I have a great background with him, super guy, and we're really excited to have a conversation with him today. With more than 40 years of experience in multiple educational settings, he has amassed extensive experience in state education policy, instructional leadership, post-secondary education, and workforce readiness. Director Dackin's career has been guided by a personal focus to work in service to children and families. Prior to being appointed as the director of the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce by Governor Mike DeWine, Director Dackin served in roles ranging from a classroom educator and a school and district leader to positions in higher education, the former Ohio Department of Education, and the State Board of Education. He continues to elevate the role that partnerships play in achieving statewide goals and is a member of several education, community, and workforce boards. Director Dackin, thank you for being with us today, and welcome to the Ohio School Board Association Forum.
Well, thank you, and what a hearty welcome it is. I really appreciate that opportunity. Kathy, I'm trying to remember who did well in that class. Not that I'm competitive or anything, but so.
We both did.
Yes.
All of us did.
And by the way, you can call me Steve.
Okay.
That's fine. I've been called worse. And Mark and I go way back too.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of stories that we can tell. But I do appreciate the opportunity to come, the invitation. And it is School Board Recognition Month.
Yes.
And so as we come to the end of the month, it doesn't mean we don't recognize boards all year long for the work that they do. And so I'm thrilled to be here and share a little bit about what's going on and looking forward to the conversation.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. Yep.
So before we start, we've talked a little bit about your background. Can you share kind of your journey, a little bit about you, your family, just so that our membership can get to know you?
Sure. I'll try not to bore you with too many of the details, but a long time ago, I started in education. Well, first of all, let me take a step back, because I have two grandfathers who served on local boards of education. They both served on the same board. It's a small town in northwest Ohio, Carroll, Ohio. And so right from the get-go, education was a priority in my family. I was the first in my family to go to college, and came from a very lower middle class background. But it was instilled in me that the importance of getting a good education. And then, so my journey actually started then as a teacher, and then pretty soon after I spent 8 years in a classroom, I kept asking myself, I really loved kids. I think the kids loved me, but I kept asking myself, I saw kids in other classrooms that maybe weren't getting the same kind of experiences, and it kind of triggered my thinking about, well, if I can make a difference with the kids that I see, but I'd like to make a difference in a larger way. And so I decided to get into administration. Did an assistant high school principal thing, then became assistant high school principal athletic director, then became high school principal, all in the Elida local schools in the Lima, Ohio area. and then had an opportunity to go to Reynoldsburg High School as a principal, and did that for about 5.5 years. I think it was 5.5 years. And then had a unique opportunity to go to the Department of Education. And I served under Susan Zellman, who was then state superintendent, as the director of the Office of Regional School Improvement Services. That was the time when No Child Left Behind was passed. And we did not have a state system of technical assistance and support for low-performing districts and schools. So we had to create one. And that came under my charge to do that. Left the department, went to Westerville City Schools, served as executive director of secondary curriculum and instruction, which the longer your title is, the more irrelevant you really are, I think. But it was a good couple years in Westerville. I learned a lot under the tutelage of George Tombaugh at the time, and then had an opportunity to go back to Reynoldsburg as kind of a succession plan for then the superintendent at that time, Dick Ross, who was my superintendent when I was principal. And so did that. Dick retired. I took over. Had a really interesting set of experiences as superintendent around transforming a district to be more receptive, I think, to the needs of our kids and so forth. Consistently, as we were changing demographically and socioeconomically, we continued to get A's and B's on the report card consistently, and we were the second lowest per pupil expenditure district in Franklin County at the time. And so that got a lot of recognition by a lot of folks. And then I had the opportunity to retire. I know you're probably shocked that I am eligible to retire given my youthful appearance. However, I went to Columbus State, had an opportunity to work with Dave Harrison at Columbus State, served as superintendent of school and community partnerships. And my portfolio really was managing a concept called the Central Ohio Compact, which was really a regional strategy focused on getting 65% of adults in our region to have a post-secondary credential of value by 2025. So it was a set of regional partnerships between K-12, higher ed, employers, and increasingly social service agencies to kind of to leverage those community assets to help kids matriculate to degree status or credential status. Then Governor DeWine appointed me as to the State Board of Education, served there 4 years. And then had a very brief stint as state superintendent of public instruction. Then I went on my golf sabbatical for a year, and really got really good at the game of golf.
It's amazing when you practice.
I'm kind of concerned when I go back and start playing my buddies again because my handicap went down. But now it's going to go back up, and it's not going to be pretty. And then when this opportunity came, I saw the legislation and so forth. But really, what convinced me to have the conversation with the governor was what he did with the science of reading. When he put a stake in the ground around that this is his legacy. This is the most important thing I'm going to do as governor, is to figure out how we can make sure kids can read at or above grade level as they matriculate through the system. He had me at hello. I mean, at that point, it was the right thing to do at the right time for the right reasons. And so I was fortunate enough to go through the process and be named and appointed director and then later confirmed.
Wow, we'll talk about a true practitioner.
Right.
Can I just mention a couple things?
Yeah.
So my family.
Yeah.
So I have 2 brothers, no sisters. And my youngest brother is a superintendent, just resigned a year ago for health reasons, which I thought was, I encouraged him to do that because it's not ever worth your physical health. And then my brother, who has since passed away, my other brother, served 16 years on the local school board for Bath Local Schools.
Wow.
And I kept asking, 4 terms?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I have my wife is a teacher, now retired, but she taught reading in Reynoldsburg. She was thrilled I was superintendent. And then my daughter teaches 3rd grade in Columbus City Schools, and so she's teaching reading, the science of reading in Columbus City Schools. I have three nieces and a nephew. Three of my nieces, well, I have more nieces than that, but 3 of my nieces actually teach elementary, Olentangy, Upper Soda Valley, and Canton, North Canton. And my nephew teaches North Canton as well. And then I have a sister-in-law who's on a school board at Marion Ridgedale. So I kind of got this whole family thing. So I kind of have this focus group of people who are going to always give me the real deal about anything I do.
Yeah.
Holidays are interesting.
Yes.
So sure.
Well, that's really great.
It
that's
is.
really
Thanks,
great.
I
And we
appreciate
thank you for the work that you've done and the work that you will do. So thanks for letting us into a little bit peek into your life.
Yeah.
So Steve, with the development of the department I'd like for you to share with us the priorities and responsibilities that the Department of Education and Workforce will have, and also specifically talk about its relationship with the State Board of
Sure.
Education.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I've always had a great relationship with the members of the board that I serve with. You know, there's some new members that I don't know that well, but the folks I serve with are good people. And their responsibilities are more narrow now, more nuanced. They essentially oversee the licensing process in Ohio for teachers and principals and others. They have responsibilities around professional conduct and territorial transfer. And then everything else has been moved over to the Department of Education and Workforce because, as you well know, we are now a cabinet agency.
Right.
And that's a very different ballgame. And I tell people, I believe that you will experience, you'll have a different set of experiences with our agency as we move forward. So essentially I report directly to the governor then, and so the DeWine Houston administration, their priorities are my priorities, which wasn't hard for me because they're the right priorities. And they're priorities I had as a superintendent and I had even at Columbus State. So those are kind of the divisions of labor, if you will, but we have to partner and work together on behalf of students and teachers and other people who have a vested interest in education in order for the system to work well.
Yeah, I think it's so important as we move forward, that cohesion and collaborative spirit will be very important as we move forward.
And Paul Kraft, who they appointed as state superintendent, I've known Paul for probably 20 years. We have a really good relationship.
Good.
And I'm just older in dirt, so I know a lot of people, kind of thing. But Paul's a good man.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I pledged to work hand in glove. In fact, the statute's very clear that Paul actually serves as an advisor to me.
Right.
That's in the statute. But we'll be more than advisor, advisee. We'll be colleagues.
So when you spoke about the priorities, I heard you mention the science of reading.
Right.
What other priorities would we say we could look forward to?
Yeah. So clearly the science of reading, and I can't say it enough about the opportunity that we have as a state. And this is where I really need folks at every level of the educational system to be all in. If we think about this, if we could leverage the collective efforts of our state, the human capital, the resources, and the will to ensure every kid can read at or above grade level as they go through the school system, think about what we could accomplish as a state. I want to lead the nation in literacy. I see no reason why Ohio can't do that. We have good policy. We've had historic investments in this last biennium budget around the science of reading, for example. So we're going to have high quality instructional materials, and districts will soon get that information. We're now to the point where we're going to be able to release a preliminary list at the end of January, but we need to do it right. And I know there's some anxiety out there because I know superintendents start their appropriations process now, some even before. So I understand that, but we have to do this right. So it's the right set of materials that are going to matter to teachers when they're in the classroom. And then we've got professional development, high quality professional development training that we're rolling out now, even as we speak. And then we've got, I think, 33 literacy coaches in high need schools and buildings. So there's a ton of resources going into this. And I'm ecstatic that the legislature and the governor's office were able to put that in the budget. Second priority for us, and this is not necessarily in a hierarchical kind of way, priorities, but I would probably put literacy in workforce, which is the second one I want to talk about, in kind of an equal status to somewhat, because in the end, literacy is the foundation for workforce.
Right.
And so, but we have workforce in our title, like you mentioned, Kathy, and that's a new thing, and that was obviously very purposeful. In the legislation, it calls for 2 deputy directors, and one deputy director, the language in the statute is over K-12. The other deputy director is career tech and workforce. I'm going to work really hard to make sure that those are not separate things, that they are integrated, because that's what we've done over many years in Ohio. As a former high school principal, we were asking kids to make decisions about career tech at the end of their 10th grade year, and with not a lot of knowledge, frankly, about it. And that needs to change. It needs to change now. And so I'm really interested in getting those folks on board. They too have to be confirmed, like I had to be confirmed. And so that might be a more deliberative process as we go on. But we're talking to people now. And if people out there know of people who might be interested in that job, please contact the department. You can contact Carolyn Jones at the department. She's my assistant. And we would welcome that opportunity to have some conversations with people. So workforce, I'm going to give you a stat. And I was going to talk a little bit about a pilot that I've been doing, but I'm going to give you a stat first. So any given year in Ohio, there's about 136,000 kids who enter high school as a freshman. About 136, give or take a few thousand, but it's pretty consistent over the last several years. And actually that number is going to start going down because of just demographics, which is another challenge for us in workforce. So fast forward, kids enter as freshmen, fast forward 6 years out, 69% of those kids never get a 2 or 4 year degree. And yet, when you think about the comprehensive high school experience most kids go through, it's largely college preparatory, particularly college preparatory for 4-year universities. Now, and again, want to push kids to higher ed if that's an appropriate path for them? No doubt. There's great jobs with a bachelor's degree. But we fell in love with the bachelor's degree 20 years ago.
True. And
most jobs that are now being created, something like 62% of all jobs to be available by the year 2025, which is not that far away now, requires something, a 2-year, something less than a bachelor's degree, something more than a high school diploma. Whether it's a set of stackable credentials, post-secondary credentials, or an associate degree, that's the world in which these kids are going to enter into. And so we've got to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. If 69% of kids in Ohio are in fact not getting a 2 or 4 year degree, what are they doing what do they have as they leave high school? We know our career tech centers do a pretty good job around that, but they serve between 17 and 20% of the population. So you've got a math number, a problem. 69%, maybe 20%. So we really have to expand career technical education into our comprehensive high schools. We have to expand career pathways into our comprehensive high schools. And all those things should lead at the end to a good job. And I define that in quotation marks. I'm not in the business of filling jobs for employers. I'm in the business of creating economic prosperity for students and families. If education is anything, it's hope and aspirational. It's aspirational for a more preferred future. I think every generation before us wanted the next generation to have it better than they had it. And I think I read a stat the other day that for the first time, the economics may line up that the next generation may not have it better than the previous generation. We've got to reverse that quickly. And as you well know, Ohio is a hotbed for employers right now. Certainly. With Intel et al. Coming to Central Ohio and other parts of the state, we don't have enough bodies right now to fill those jobs. And I mentioned demographics. We're going to have less kids simply because birth rates are down, and they will be for the next 10 years. And the aging boomer population, I'm a baby boomer, so I can say that. Boomers, okay, boomer, are aging out. And so it really is a situation where we have to upskill, reskill adults, as well as making sure kids are coming out with the necessary skills and knowledge to be job ready.
Steve, I'm going to ask you a question.
That was a long answer, wasn't it?
That was a great answer, because what I found in my previous high school principalship was it's almost a societal thing we have to do also, right? Lots of families say, nope, my kid's going to college. That's the accepted thing, and I do believe a big piece of this is to educate our families to say there are more than one option, and it's okay to say to your neighbors, my child's not going to a 4-year institution.
That's right.
My child is doing this because that's the best fit for my child.
We need to come up with new banners and yard signs, right? And it's every little thing. It's like how we recognize seniors as they leave the building. Traditionally it's about their GPAs and having scholarships and that. And that's all good. We should recognize that. But there are other things. We could recognize kids who had a successful experience in an internship or an apprenticeship, or it's those kinds of things that can collectively start elevating this. And then, frankly, what we need to do most in our schools is we need to get the information about careers and opportunities to families, to students early on.
Yes.
And engage parents early on, particularly middle school age students, parents of middle aged school students, so that they know what opportunities are. And I have a lot of experience that I've seen over the last several years about how best to do that. But it's crucial because we did a focus group when I was involved in a pilot with Dublin City Schools, 9 employers, and some nonprofits on trying to figure out the recent graduate phenomena. These are kids 18 to 24 who have graduated in the last few years, who we have no idea what they're doing. They didn't go to college. We don't have a way to get a hold of them. Some of them went to college, but they dropped out. Some of them never graduated from high school to begin with. That's at 69%. So we ran a kind of pilot with Dublin, and thanks to John Marshausen, their superintendent. He gave us access to their directory information. So we partnered with an organization called Graduation Alliance that went out and drafted up a template of how to get in contact with these kids, social media, texting, blah, blah, blah. And we learned a lot because we did get a hold of them. And they told us a lot.
Oh, they.
And what we learned from them, and particularly kids from urban centers, but this was true for suburban kids as well, that when they were in high school, when they ask about opportunities after high school, what should I do? The typical question that I had as a high school principal is, what do you want to do? Well, what's your context for that? I mean, if you have a limited life experience and your parents have a limited life experience, it's not certain to you.
Yeah.
You don't have any way to make that decision at that point. And so one of the challenges that we heard was that kids, when we asked them that, what did people tell you in high school? They said, we had 2 choices, go to college, military.
Right.
And you
Which are
think
both good choices.
good
right?
choices.
Yes.
Right.
I'm going to
Yes.
say it again,
But-
good choices.
But not the only choice.
Not the only choices. And when you can go make $100,000 as an auto tech, I mean, they just don't know.
They don't know.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so that's one of our charges. So we've got money in the buy-in budget for career readiness that we'll make available to ensure that we set up a system. And this is the other challenge in Ohio. We have a lot of random acts of improvement. We have a lot of districts doing really good things with kids around literacy, around workforce, and other issues, but we don't have scale. And it shouldn't be a zip code issue for a kid. And I feel strongly about that. And it can't be the luck of the draw.
Right.
Happen to have the right principal, the right superintendent, or the right teacher, or whatever. And that's why my focus on leadership is so, I'm so focused on leadership for that reason. And that's where school boards come in, frankly.
Yeah.
So I know that leads probably maybe to another question.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would guess.
let me ask this. You talked about the importance of leadership. Kathy, we have some guests in the house today.
We did.
Aspiring
principals joined
Yeah.
us
Did you
today.
say perspiring or
That's
aspiring?
right. Well, they will learn. We did. We had a room full.
Yeah.
Our neighbors downstairs, the Secondary Association, brought in a group, and we're really excited, right, to see some interest in getting into leadership because of how important. So I think that's your third focus, right,
Right.
is the principalship or the educational leadership.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot to name the 2 other priorities. So obviously wellness, student wellness is a huge issue for the governor. He's put money in each of the budgets, and thankfully the legislature went along with it. It's hard to do reading, writing, arithmetic when you've got other issues,
Certainly.
hunger, housing, et cetera. And then the fourth one is actually just accelerating learning. And because we have a huge gap, some of it was, done as a result of the pandemic. Some of it was before the pandemic, but we need to accelerate all learning, not just kids who are behind, but all learning. So those are the 4 priorities. The strategies to get to the 4 priorities, one of those are having great principals and great teachers and having every kid have access to a great principal and a great teacher. We know that makes a difference.
Right.
The research is clear. In fact, in our literacy work, we found out that principals have the highest effect size
Yes.
of all the other variables for reading. So think about that, principals. And so having been a former principal for a lot of years, as you were, Kathy, and as I tried to get Mark to be also, we know the importance that a principal has in a building.
Well, your resources, you're allocating your money, your
Listen,
time, staffing.
I call it setting conditions in the building for adults and
Yeah.
children to learn. It's really that. And it's all those things you just said and more.
Yeah.
And I am concerned right now that people are not getting into the principalship like they once did. There's a ton of reasons why that might be.
Right.
But we have to work together, boards, superintendents, we all have to work together and others to figure out how to solve that issue. If we're going to get this done, then we have to have leadership. And it has to be at every level. I really encourage boards, as a former board member myself, I talked about my brother, my sister-in-law, and so on, and having served for boards, it is critical that boards of education take the initiative to ensure that their superintendent has the authority to lead. But, and I'm going to say this, I'm a huge supporter of local control because I had it. And I know when I had a board that had confidence in me, allowed me to lead, but held me accountable for results. Because it's one thing to have local control, it's another one to be responsible and accountable to your kids and to your community for kids' success. And that to me is really that dynamic. And so I'm going to be looking for partners in this journey to help us think about how we can recruit, how we can train, how we can professionally develop folks in the principalship.
Yeah.
And I would still say also to retain those
retain
good.
them.
Those
Oh,
good
absolutely.
leaders.
I'm sorry. Yes. The other R.
Yeah,
Yes.
the other R.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's so important, as we talked
No
about,
doubt.
Steve. There's been a lot of burnout on every level of leadership.
Yeah.
But the research does support that the right leader in the building makes all the difference.
Yeah,
as far
and
as the growth of those kids.
that's not to absolve the teacher leadership role, because
Certainly.
as you know, good principals distribute their leadership
That's right.
in a building.
That's right.
So it's not vested in a person
Right.
necessarily.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, you can consider us a partner in that journey.
I
How
will
about
do that.
That is our commitment to
Okay,
you.
I
'cause
like that.
From our experience,
Yeah.
we know how important that is
Yeah.
to the success of students. So we've talked about families a little bit, about how important families are in being involved in their children's education. Can you tell us a little bit about family engagement, how it does contribute to student success, and how can our Ohio families get involved?
Well, as you well know, there's a myriad of research that supports the involvement of families in the education lives of their children, and how that tends to lead to prosperity for their children and success. So we can't underscore that or underestimate it at all. I think that one of the challenges is that we need to figure out better ways to welcome parents as partners. And so one of the things that I've brought into the department is that we want to create the department as a student family centric agency. Now, so you always ask yourself, who's your customer? Any organization's got to ask themselves that, right? And so the consumer, in this case, are students and families. So they would be a primary customer as a consumer. But we know that the way we serve our families and students are through our educators in Ohio and our school folks. So it's imperative that districts create structures and frameworks in their building that make parents feel like they're actually partners
Yes.
in the education of their children. We have a system that we've had in for 20-some years, excuse me, 20-some years, that was ushered in by the federal government to make sure that students with disabilities had a true individualized education plan crafted by school folks in partnership with parents that would help guide the student through their school setting. Now, I am not sitting here calling for that for everybody. We do have a statutory requirement around graduation plans, but I would like to explore with many of our constituents how those plans are being utilized and how are they serving as an engagement apparatus for parents. Because the great thing about the IEP process is that you have to annually review, you have to have periodic reviews, parents are engaged and involved. I can't think of a better engagement, well, I can think of a lot of engagement strategies, but that is certainly a really good engagement strategy for parents. So I just look at that because at some point down the road, technology is going to be sophisticated enough for us to truly customize the educational experience for every child. And that's the nirvana, right? That's where we aspire to be, meet them where they're at and take them where they're going. I think the other thing that we need to do is, and this sounds kind of trite, but I think it's powerful in practice, is that we have to grab the hearts of our kids. And I think that's particularly true as they get older in the system. Because I think many kids, I mean, you look at the dropout rate, you look at Gallup's done a ton of surveys over the years about student engagement, and what we're finding over time is that students appear to be less and less engaged in school. Yeah. And we're finding a lot of variables there, from technology and interests and things like that, but we've got to find a way to grab a kid's heart about who they are, what they're about, what they aspire to be, what interests them, what motivates them. And the thing that I learned this a long time ago, reading a book by a guy by the name of Michael Fullen at the time. And I think it was Michael, but he said, never think that as an adult, when you're teaching kids, that you're in charge of their learning. Never think that. Because the person who's in charge of their learning is the learner.
That's right.
And so your charge is to try to figure out, how do I motivate that young person to want to learn what I have to share? And years ago, when people sat in straight rows and and all that, that might have been a little easier task. Right. People may have been more compliant 30, 40 years ago. But now kids want to know why.
Yes, sir.
And I think they deserve an answer to that. I think that's a legitimate answer for any young person. And I think it's up to the adults in their lives to work to try to answer that question and give them purpose.
Yeah.
We are seeing an increase in student voice, right?
Yeah.
Instead of telling students this is what's best for you, is actually asking them,
right.
What's your input? How can we best serve you and support you in
And let's bring the family in that conversation.
Right.
Yep.
Because that's a really important component of that. And so that, again, that's another way to engage as you think about that.
Yeah. Steve, as I'm listening to you speak, I wish we could just keep you all day with us. But
Well, be careful what you wish for.
But as you've discussed so many topics with us today, I'd just like you to share, with our membership, if they could take away one thing from our conversation today, what would that thing be that you'd like them to walk away with?
Literacy, literacy, literacy.
Yeah.
I can't say it enough. I said earlier, we need a call to action. We need kind of like a Marshall Plan. I'm an old historian by training. And so I don't think it's just up to educators to make sure kids can read. I think parents have to be involved. I think community people. So again, imagine what we could do in a state that said we're all in on making sure our kids are the best in the world, best in class in literacy.
I have a question for you. So if I'm a parent and science of reading is being implemented in the schoolhouse where my children attend, how as a parent can I find information about science of reading? How can I support it at home? Is there a resource?
The department has a ton of resources on our website. If people were curious to go in and look, we have our literacy plan posted. We have information about the science of reading. There's even efforts to train parents in the science of reading if they wish to be trained. They can serve as tutors.
Great.
In fact, there's some emerging research, I think came out of the West Coast, that when parents are trained in the science of reading and they offer tutorial services, particularly to their own children, it's highly effective. And so there's a whole lot of ways that this can happen. But certainly the department, and there's other resources out there. I'm sure districts have information also that's available on their websites. I hope they do.
No, that's great.
They will tomorrow.
No, that's great to hear, because that'll help our parents and our communities more understand and how best they can be influenced.
And I just want to leave with this.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak to you. You two have been good friends over many years. And we have a clarion call at our beckoning. We're at an inflection point in our state. All the data says so, and I'm a data guy. And I'm simply asking for your membership to commit to these actions that's going to be beneficial to our students and families, because they deserve nothing less than our full commitment to these things. So I just appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk, and I I love the people who volunteer there. Well,
Yeah.
I know they get paid, but we know the payment is not near what their time commitment is. And to be a board member is sometimes a thankless job in some cases, but know that isn't where I see it.
Yeah.
I am very grateful and thankful for their service.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here, Steve. We're excited about the work that you've already done on behalf of education, and we're looking forward to what you'll do with the Department of Education and Workforce. And we look forward to partnering with you, as Kathy has already said, as we move forward here in the state of Ohio. Well, Kathy, I'm inspired.
I'm excited.
I'm inspired.
We love students, and we
Yes.
love the success of students, and we love adults and families getting involved, and the support system being in place. So we're really excited to walk alongside of you, beside you during this journey, to support, to have our membership support this work.
And I have to say very transparently, those resources that are available around the science of reading that are on the website, that's going to make a major difference for our parents, our students, our administrators. I just think this is going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
And thank the two of you for your leadership in this organization, because leadership matters, and it matters big time.
Yeah.
It does. So thank you to our membership for your leadership in your local communities. And if there's any way the OSBA team can support the work, the such important work that you do for your students, for your families, and for your communities, the OSBA team is here to support you. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being here at the OSBA Forum.